Yes, the spotlight was on the new iPhone 14 recently, but now that the dust has settled and most flagship smartphones have launched this year, I think it's time to have another look at the Galaxy Fold 4. As a first-time foldable user and admittedly an Apple user for many years, I was shocked at how good this phone is. And you want to know the best part? It's hard to explain, but there's nothing to do with the specs of this phone. The Galaxy Fold 4 has brought something back to me that a lot of brands out there have ignored. The user experience. If you already have a Fold, you know this, or if you had a previous one. But for me, coming from a non-foldable phone for many years, it was a total shock. And it's something that a lot of companies, I feel, are neglecting these days. It's just a simple ergonomics, simple how nice it is to use. I've actually avoided the foldable phones previously for two main reasons. One, I honestly thought that they cost too much, especially the Galaxy Fold, right? And two, it looks really unwieldy to me, too big and uncomfortable. I've got to be honest, that's how it looked to me. And you might be thinking, that's exactly what I think right now. But wow, how wrong was I? If you're not sure about the Fold, I would genuinely recommend, going to a store and just try it out for 5 minutes. It really took me by surprise. Now, this is going to sound a bit counterintuitive, and coming from someone on YouTube, I don't really blame you for applying a large pinch of salt to what I'm saying here, but the Fold is the most ergonomic phone I've used in ages. I told you this was going to sound weird, but it's not all perfect. There's a bit of a word of caution, which I'll get into later in the video. I've always enjoyed the bigger displays, 12 Pro Max, 13, 14 Pro Max, and now S22 Ultra as well last year, the 22 Ultra. Beautiful larger displays. But after a while, when you're using this for a long period of time, they do start to get quite uncomfortable to hold. Not to mention how slippery some of them are, like the S22 Ultra. And there's definitely a temptation here to draw a comparison between these devices and the Fold. But as the title suggests, for me, the Fold 4 is in a different league, is on a class of its own. And as far as I can see, based on this month and a half, is here to stay. Do I worry about durability, software updates, all these things that Android phones have historically been renowned for, right, being a problem? Sure, I do worry about those things, but I've also started to really trust this product. There's something to be said about something that just performs, right? Unlike the iOS 16 on the iPhone 14, for example, which has been, in my view, a disaster. And I've got to say, so far, the trust that I've placed on this phone has really paid off. I've been trying the new iPhone 14 recently, and like I said, I did some videos on that as well, but really, more often than not, this is the device that I'm reaching for, not only in the evenings, which is when I tend to use my Pixel 6 Pro because it's just lighter and easier to use, but now for some of my work as well during the day. And even though I don't do a lot of gaming normally, I've been really enjoying gaming on this display. Another reason you can't compare this phone with others is the speakers on this are out of this world, especially for gaming, and they really come to life when you're watching content, especially when the content that you're watching supports Dolby Atmos.
It's only half. Please, I have a family.
This is true for a lot of smartphones, I appreciate that, but with this is different, right? When you get a bigger display and apps that take advantage of that, I can really use this now for meetings with, mostly Microsoft Teams and Zoom, but I use Slack as well sometimes, all of which work perfectly. The front-facing camera is pretty useless, I've got to be honest, but really not an issue for me. When you open it and the inside under the display camera, again, not the best camera you'll ever see, but it's good enough for conference calls. But if I really want a camera, if I want to take a photo or record a video, I'll be using the main camera anyway. For the odd conference call and work meeting, the camera inside the display is just fine. When it comes to Dex, I don't really use this feature a lot on the phone, mainly because I've got the Tab S8 Ultra for that, but I thought I'd show you here how powerful that is. iPad Pro users, look away now. This is gonna hurt a little bit. Sorry. Samsung Dex is incredible. If you work on Windows and Microsoft Office stuff, and you don't want to buy a laptop just for things like Word, PowerPoint, and Excel, this is a great alternative, right? You don't need a computer, right? This is all you need, and the experience is getting better and better. I say that, but then I think, well, hang on, the wireless connection isn't the best, right? If you can do it wirelessly if you have a monitor that supports this, like the one I've got here from Samsung, but really it's better to use the kind of straight up USB-C connection here. Get yourself a nice Bluetooth keyboard and boom. I mean, you've got a workstation here powered by your phone. Do I need a sound effect? I'll just do it with my mouth. That works. You can use Link to Windows too, which gets your notifications, your phone calls. You can share apps between the phone and the Windows PC. I don't really use this, apart from a Windows VM that I've got here. Sometimes I go there for some work stuff, but I don't really take advantage of that feature. Oh, Alex, but Apple's got Stage Manager. Get out. No, seriously. out. There's something else that I'm really enjoying using the Fold for, which is when I'm driving. Now I know this is a particular thing to me, but maybe you're on the same boat. It's not quite like having a Tesla and the big display in the middle there, but using this open to kind of using the maps and whatever feels great. If you have a recommendation for a good car mount that I can use with it open like this, then let me know. Now you might be wondering, this phone still looks way too cumbersome to carry around.
And look, I've been there too, right? I was really worried about this, especially last year when I first thought, this looks really good. But I was really reluctant to pay, I think it was close to $2,000 at that point. And I know Samsung do great deals anyway, but at that time, I thought it was way too much money for something that was pretty much, unproven tech. Now, it does feel that they have matured it a little bit, but I can definitely understand where you're coming from if you're not sure about this device. For me, it's a combination of things. I like to keep an open mind on tech and give you a kind of a balanced view, but at the same time, personally, I'm getting quite bored with iPhones, to be honest. So this came at the right time, and I thought, well, may as well try. The price has come down now. It was the best decision ever. It hasn't really replaced every phone that I've got because I use it for different things, but I'm reaching for it a lot more these days.
Feels no different than carrying my iPhone 14 or the S22 Ultra, except I get this beautiful large display to appreciate content and games in a much better way, in my view anyway. By the way, YouTube can be quite tricky for a small channel like this, so if you're enjoying this video, a thumbs up will go a long way in getting YouTube to show this video to more people. And if you like my stuff, a sub to the channel will be amazing. I really appreciate that. And if you already subscribed from a previous Fold video, thank you so much for sticking around. I know you probably got fed up with my iPhone videos recently. I just love talking about gadgets. So if you like that sort of stuff, you're in the right place. Right, not everything with this phone is a bed of roses though. As I said at the beginning of this video, there's some issues, right, that I need to talk about. I always try to remain balanced here because this phone is amazing, but there are a couple of things that could be better. Well, three things really. One is not really a direct thing with the Fold, it's more of a wider Android issue. The first one is from a hardware perspective, which I think Samsung can and they probably will focus on for the next iteration. And you might be thinking, oh, here we go, he's going to talk about specs. Actually, I'm not, right? I'm really happy with the specs. I don't think it needs anything better, right? I know they are on the same spec levels as the S22 Ultra or the iPhone in some areas, but for me, on a day-to-day basis, it's been more than good enough. Where I do think Samsung needs to improve is on the quality of the display material. Still blows my mind that you can fold the display in the first place. Yes, there's a thing in the middle here, but honestly, when you're using it, you don't really notice it. But the issue I've got, it's not a massive issue by the way, but I think it should be mentioned, is how it feels. This may sound weird, but it doesn't feel expensive. It might be a perception thing from my perspective, but like, you paid all this money for a smartphone, it should feel expensive. Maybe I'm being silly here, and actually I did make a big mistake. I removed the screen protector that came with it, and maybe that's part of how I feel that it's not expensive enough. I don't know, I just thought it was meant to be removed, and anyway, I am being extra careful with it and making sure that I keep it clean and away from dust and stuff, but it just doesn't feel right to me. I think it would be great if it felt more like glass. Now, the second issue I've got is not something that is particular to the Fold, but because of this form factor, right, it exacerbates the fact that some Android apps just don't get developed with this form factor in mind. So you find lots of apps that either don't work really well, or you have to kind of move them around the screen, and just, the experience isn't taking advantage of this, the fact that you can fold and you can use all this area. And this becomes really apparent when you're using social media apps. And a lot of reviews there, people kind of gloss over this, but if you're a heavy Twitter user or Instagram in particular, the experience on those is pretty terrible on the Fold. Not quite to the point that is unusable, but yeah, really bad. And the third issue I've got, which is a minor one, is voice input. I've been quite spoiled with the Pixel 6 Pro in the last year, so now I expect every phone to have this amazing level of performance that speech to text on the Pixel has, right? It's just incredible. You can configure it and use Google services for this like you do on the Pixel, but the Pixel, I don't know if it's their chip, whatever it is on Google, that just performs a lot better. But that's it. And if you're coming from an iPhone, one of the things that you might be concerned about, with good reason, is the keyboard. Initially, I'm not gonna lie to you, you're gonna hate it, but you can really customize it to suit your style of typing. You can have it floating, you can have it divided. The predictive text starts to learn how you type and eventually becomes a bit smarter, and the more you use it, the better it gets. And Samsung always deliver great haptics on their phones, and it's no different here. It's a little bit more subtle than the S22 Ultra, but I actually really like it. In fact, I think I prefer the haptics on this than on the S22 Ultra. Both are great, but I think I like this one more. So in the last month and a half, I loved how the camera is fun to use. It's something that I picked up on this before. Like many Android phones, Samsung packed a lot of fun features here, some of which I'd never used. But my 10-year-old son and I took this phone for a spin in London recently, I definitely recommend you watch that video because, I was using time lapses, 4K recording, ultra slow-mo. We had so much fun recording just with the Fold, and it's been a great camera for portrait shots as well, and really responsive. And I think this is another reason actually why I really like the Fold in comparison with the S22 Ultra, especially for us here in the UK, in the Europe, that we got the Exynos crap, not with the Fold. We get Snapdragon, and it has been really snappy. I can't wait to produce more on this. YouTube thinks you're gonna like this video over here, and I created this playlist as well that I think you're gonna like over here. If you haven't already, click on my face here to subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Bye.